This is Jonathan Aguilar here for Pro Boxing Fans, joined by former three-weight world champion and broadcaster Mr. Duke McKenzie MBE. Duke, how's things?
Yeah, I'm really well, thanks. Honest to God, couldn't be better. Don't
Good.
have bad days, just have experiences. So every day's an experience, isn't it?
Absolutely, good to hear. Let's get straight into it. A
Yeah.
dramatic night at the Copper Box on Saturday night. Johnny Fischer knocked out by Dave Allen in 5 rounds. What was your immediate reaction when you saw that knockout?
Well, I think like everybody else, it's like shock horror because there's a saying in boxing. There's a saying in boxing. But boxers say this is that if you get knocked down or you get knocked out, well, you can't really tell if you get knocked out because you're out. But excuse me, sorry. If you get knocked down, always try and land on your back because if you can look up, you can get up. But when you go face first, that was a bad knockout. I don't think your matey boy there, Johnny Fischer, will ever get over that. He looked to me going into the fight. He looked a bit shell shocked going in. Talk's cheap ultimately. You can talk it up all you want. You can say I'm ready and A B C D, but he looked a little bit hesitant. Wouldn't be an understatement. He looked very hesitant. When you I don't know how tall he is, but I imagine he's about 6'3", 6'4". He's a big, strapping man. And when you start throwing don't hit me punches, as I like to call them, he was just pouring with his jab from the first round. Now, I've been winning the first. I think he won 3 out of the first 4 for me. Fischer. But when you're going to pour with a jab like that, like I say, that says to the other guy, I'm a bit weary. You know, I'm not sure of myself. I'm just pouring with my jab. There was no snap behind his jab. Now he reminded me of a very poor. I don't know if you remember the sort of '76 Olympic Games, '80s Olympic Games. Those sort of Olympic Games with like when you had the Russians, they had a very similar style where they used to pour with their jab, but then they'd back it up. They'd put the right hand straight behind it or the left, depending on what position they were in, Southpaw Orthodox. But his jab was so lame. It was so timid. It was so there was no snap behind it, and you only get away with that for so long. Why on earth he allowed the smaller, more aggressive guy to get on the inside? Where Alan? That's where he's at home now. That's where he does his damage. He can't fight off the back foot. He can't fight you at long range. He likes to be up close and personal. So Fischer allowed him to get close, and now he's paid the ultimate price.
In terms of Dave Allen's performance, I think Anthony Joshua put out something saying that a few years ago everyone said he was finished, and now he's had a bit of a resurgence in his career. Were you impressed by Dave's performance over the last 2 fights, and what do you see as the future for him?
Well, I mean, he's got to be commended because his resilience is quite, like I say, it's commendable considering where he's been and he's made it very public. Somewhere he's got the strength and the courage and the conviction and believed in himself, or maybe the people around him believed in him and has helped him to overcome these demons that he had. And like I say, listen, everybody's got a hard luck story in the sport of boxing. Everyone, from champions right through to contenders, everybody's got a hard luck story of where they've come from, what they're going through, and where they've been. So if you look at it like that, you've got to say to yourself, you know what, he's the guy's a winner. Even if he loses his next fight, he's a winner because he's come back from the brinks of. It sounds like he's come back from the brinks of despair and turned his life completely around. And now he's this. Let's just say in his next fight, in his very next fight, he gets a British title fight, and let's just say the Cinderella story continues, and he wins that. He could die tomorrow, a happy man. Winning the British title would be like he was on top of the world.
Mm. In terms of Fischer, obviously a devastating finish from Dave Allen. Where does that leave him with the rebuild process?
A long way off the mark. Like I say, I mean, I don't want to say he was overhyped, but he was in that hyped sort of bubble where he was the next great sort of white hope, if you like, if you will. They was building him up. He was going to be the next big thing. Big punching, big strapping guy, and then all of a sudden, his bubble's been burst. I mean, many people, myself included, I thought that Alan won the first fight. just nicked it, just nicked it. It wasn't really daylight robbery, but now obviously Allen's put the wrong that was right. You know, he's made it right. He's won the return, and now Fischer finds himself in like no man's land. And he clearly hadn't learnt from their first meeting what 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 Allen was all about. You can't allow a smaller guy that's physically strong to get on the inside. And like I say, that was such a bad knockout. I don't know if you come back from that kind of a knockout. I mean, I've been chinned once or twice myself actually in my career, but I never went face first. So maybe that's why I was allowed to bounce back. However, he hasn't been afforded that luxury. And it was, like I say, it was a devastating knockout. It tests not only your character and your resolve, but also your actual your mentality. Because it looked to me like Fischer, like I say, he was doing okay. He was winning the rounds. I made it 3-1 going into the fifth. And then all of a sudden, it was like alarm bells started ringing. In that fifth round, it was like, because he was hurt in that fifth round previously in their first meeting, it was like the alarm bells started ringing. And then he went into a little bit of a shell. And when he got clipped with the first right hand shot wasn't great. It clipped him right on the top of the head, but it was just like an overhand clubbing right hand. But it was enough to knock him off centre. But the uppercut, oh, mate, that was the absolute finisher. So where does he go from here? Listen, I don't want to take nothing away from his coaches, but his coaches clearly aren't showing him and giving him the right tactics to fight that kind of an opponent. And, you know, even if he had taken the right advice, who's to say the result wouldn't have been the same? But whatever tactics they had, they were wrong. Because, like I say, I've always been taught, you never allow the smaller guy to get on the inside. Because, you know, if you've got longer arms than the smaller guy, you can't fight him at that game. You can't fight him on the inside. Your arms are too long. I don't know that many guys with long arms that can fight on the inside. Long guys, you know, guys with long arms like a Larry Holmes or Lennox Lewis or in the heavyweight division have got long arms. They like to keep you right on the outset, on the end of their jab. And then they nail you from distance. You don't see those guys getting on the inside and working away. It's okay if you're Rocky Marciano or Mike Tyson. Do you see what I mean? Or Allen, as in this case, because that's where he wanted it. And again, it was like he set his stall out properly, Allen, because he started slow. He was just working his way into the rounds, and at some point, you knew he was going to explode. And when he did, well, the end result was devastating for Fischer.
In terms of just, you know, names that Dave Allen could fight, I've seen, you know, he's obviously got that WBA continental title now, so that will give him a ranking within the
Mm-hmm.
WBA.
Will
Looking
it?
looking at the rankings, as you've got Jarrell Miller. I can't off the top of my head remember exactly who's in those rankings, but what kind of names, like if he doesn't get, say, a British title shot, would it be a good thing to fight maybe a domestic, like a big name like a Joe Joyce, or maybe like a big name American, like I say Jarrell Miller, someone like that?
Well, you just called it. I don't know if you want the promoter's job, but Joe Joyce would be. Now, listen, Joe Joyce would be an absolute. That would be the fight for him to make, given the fact that Allen's lost to Fraser Clark, right? So you ain't going to call him out again. And again, you know, sometimes it's again. I can only speak from my own experience. And when somebody's beaten you once, or you've been in a controversial fight where you've just nicked a decision, the worst thing you can do is to go back and fight them straight away. In my book, you should have a couple of fights to get your confidence back, B, let the dust settle, and then you see what the other guy, where he may or may not have tripped up. If he's improved enough, he moves on. You don't go anywhere near him. However, if he's lost in the interim, then you call it on again. You know, maybe I should become a matchmaker. I don't even know. I'm just saying, you know, I just think to myself, what the first fight was such a controversial fight, but you didn't have to have an immediate rematch. They could have had one or two between them, and then the story might have been different. But to go back in, you're not proving anything to anybody else, as in the case, in this particular case, because now Fischer, he's got to lick his wounds. He's got to say to himself, right, where am I going from here? And right now, his future doesn't look too bright, because when you get knocked out like that, you're always going to question yourself. You know, I don't care who you are, where you come from, what language you speak, you're going to question yourself, because when the going gets tough, because it will, he's going to question himself. And the heavyweight division, unlike any other weight division, you're one punch from victory and you're one punch from disaster. And that was a disaster on Saturday night.
And on that Joyce potential, say Joyce against Allen, who would you back to win that?
Well, right now you've got to go Allen, haven't you? You know, he's got the momentum. You know, he's what you call it. He's the proper people's champion. Everybody loves him because he's got his hard luck story. And, I don't blame him and I don't blame the public. He's a very likable guy and he keeps it real. He tells it like it is. He doesn't try to be something that he's not. He's not suddenly going, I'm world champion or I'm world class or anything like that. I think he knows and the rest of everybody else knows this is all about levels. And maybe his level will only be a British title. But for him, that's as good as winning a world title because he could never ever imagine that he would be in the position that he's in now, maybe 6 months or a year ago.
Mm. Just kind of closing out, Duke, with one other topic. We've seen Tyson Fury's been in the gym teasing a comeback. What's your thoughts? You want to see him back?
Boring. It's boring. I think everybody's bored to tears with Fury. You know, I'm retiring. I'm fighting on. I'm gonna fight. Everybody's just sick to death with it, and I don't really care what he does. If he does it and he comes back, great, because it puts bums on seats and eyes on the prize, and everybody takes a little bit more notice of the heavyweight division. The heavyweight division is thriving at the minute. There's so many good heavyweights in there, and I'll include Tyson Fury in that. He ain't a bad heavyweight. But and he brings a lot of excitement, much excitement to the heavyweight division. But I'm sure everybody's sick to the back teeth of hearing him saying, "I'm retiring, I'm fighting on again." It's got really sort of boring now. If you're gonna do it, do it. If you're not, shut up and get lost.
Just lastly, Duke, I haven't watched it yet. I am planning to watch it, but I've seen that talkSPORT have released your life stories, I believe, excuse me, with Gareth and Spencer. Just talk us through
Yeah.
what people can uh, just preview it for us. What was said?
It is what it is. It's a little breakdown on my life story, and I'm sure there's a lot of this modern sort of fan base that know nothing about my career, nothing about my journey, where I've been, and what took me there. The amount of times that my manager Mickey Duff, God rest his soul, took me off to America to learn my trade. I was meeting people like Bob Arum and Don King and Shelley Finkel. This is like back in the early 80s, 82, 84, that sort of period. We went on like a whistle stop tour of the USA, and I just lived out of a suitcase. And Mickey Duff used to give me like pocket money. But one of Mickey Duff's favourite sayings to me was, spend a little, save a lot. You can borrow as much money as you want, but I want it back. So come fight day, come once you get your paycheck and you start seeing deductions on it, it hurts. But that taught me a very valuable lesson. It taught me, he learned me how to save some money. That was one of the very valuable lessons he gave me. And like I say, I had a fantastic career. I've met so many wonderful people like Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler and Evander Holyfield. I spoke to Pernell Whitaker one year for about an hour at Gleason's gym in New York. And God rest his soul, because obviously he's passed on. But, I was meeting all these guys when they were on the ascendancy, when they were on the way up. These guys were like young puppies, like I was at that time. And Evander Holyfield gave me a lot of his time when I met him in Vegas one year. And, but I've been privileged to have seen these guys firsthand and gain some experience off them. Not only physical experience and watching them work out and trying to nick a few of their moves, but also talking to these guys and listening to these guys and listening to how their coaches spoke to them. Do you see what I mean? And then listening to my coach speak to me, my coach, Colin Smith, who was a great coach, by the way, Colin Smith, with me anyway. He was fantastic. And, like I say, you have to have a really close connection with your coach, almost like a father-son relationship, so that if you're having a bad day at the gym, the coach isn't going to pull you down and start, berating you. Do you see what I mean? They massage your ego, tell you how great you are, and lift you back up again, and make you believe in yourself. So, like I say, I can remember walking into Trump Tower one year with Mickey Duff, because Mickey Duff had an office in Trump Tower on the same floor as Donald Trump, and introduced me to Donald Trump like I was his best mate. Do you see what I mean? It was great, and yeah, I was listening. I was like, I'm like 19, 20 years of age, and he's like, hey, Don, this is my new. This is probably pardon my American accent. It's not very good, but you know, he's like, this is this because Mickey Duff had this drawl when he spoke, and he sounded American. But he's like, you know, this is like my new fighter, and we're going to go all the way. And I wanted to fight everybody then. Do you see what I mean? And I can remember Mickey does say to me, just calm your ass down, because nothing happens before time, and we'll get there. And we did over a 17-year period. So now listen, I've got some beautiful memories and some fantastic times, and I've met some great people in my life. So I'm very, very lucky indeed.
Well, everyone check that out on the talkSPORT YouTube channel. I think the talkSPORT Boxing YouTube channel. Duke,
Yeah.
been a pleasure as always. Good to speak to you again, and hopefully I'll speak to you soon. All the
No,
best.
thanks again. I appreciate you. God bless. Have a great day.